All right, hey guys. So we are here doing our first show of a metal album review. We don't know the title yet, so when you're watching this, you might know the title. We obviously, you guys know us from, or you may know us from our sister show, At the Gates Paranormal. We wanted to talk today on this first episode about Mayhem's new album, Daemon. So it came out this past week. The physical copies came out this past week. We gave it a listen, and we're gonna kind of talk about our thoughts on it. So, Mike, what did you think?
I thought it was gonna just be another heavy metal album. I didn't think, their last couple didn't really stick with me too much. I've listened to them a couple times, and they never stuck with me. So I didn't have.
That was what my problem was with Esoteric Warfare, and I think with that one and Grand Declaration of War, it was too technical. And there wasn't anything that caught my ear, like you said. It didn't feel.
I listened to it and then I forgot about it.
Like Mayhem, yeah. And when we saw him live, we got to see him live at the Philadelphia Metal and Beer Festival a couple years ago, and they were amazing live. Just the songs on the albums there didn't translate. And what I thought about listening to Daemon through, I was like, I can't wait to see him live. Mm-hmm. They're coming with the Bath in springtime, and we're gonna go catch one of the shows, whether it's the Philadelphia one. We live in Buffalo, so whether it's the Philadelphia one, we'll drive all the way up there, or the Toronto one, and we might even do a review after the show. But I think listening to Daemon live, I think will be amazing.
I agree. Attila's vocals on this, they were so good. Like I've listened to him. He sang on some Sun Tracks, one of Steve's favorite bands, and to hear him on this, I mean, all his. It was just, he just did such a good job, and there was a couple times where I thought of the way that he would scream. It reminded me a lot of Nergal from Behemoth, and that's kind of, obviously Mayhem was around before Behemoth, but that's what it kind of made me think of, and I always liked Nergal's vocals, so it was I was really impressed with how Attila sang on this one for sure.
Attila's vocals definitely caught my ear on this one, and I was listening to De Mysteriis Dom Satanas a few weeks ago before this album came out, and I had recently picked up Wolfslayer Abyss, which I had listened to before, but never had a physical copy of it. So I picked it up a few weeks ago, and Attila's vocals have come such a long way from De Mysteriis Dom Satanas, and Maniac's vocals on Wolfslayer Abyss are really one of the best performances that they have captured on any album, and I think that Attila really comes close here on Daemon to capturing that whole. I mean, sometimes he's like, when he does the clean vocals, and they're not clean, they're like operatic. They made me think of when I was listening to it, I had visuals of like ancient Rome, where some sort of ritual were not supposed to be taking place.
It takes you out of
you're seeing it
where you're listening to.
Yes, and it was and then on Malum. It was so. He had almost like a thrash-like voice. It reminded me of Peter Dolving from The Haunted. He obviously he's not with The Haunted anymore, but he had a thrash-like voice. It was in between the growl and a scream, and it almost like Phil Anselmo, I would say.
Yeah.
It was right in that area, that range.
But you could still tell that it was Attila.
So his vocals. I like some of the guitar work. The drums on this album sound phenomenal. The bass sounds phenomenal. It's got a real big low end. And it's like Esoteric Warfare. My problem with that one was it felt like there was no bass in the drums or in the bass. And the same thing with I listened to Grand Declaration of War the other day, and I listened to it all the way through, and it was so difficult to get through. It really is probably my least favorite Mayhem album, and probably one of my least favorite albums of all time. I really don't like it.
Yeah.
But Daemon, I liked a lot. I really there's 3 tracks right in a row that really kind of got my attention. Okay, so some of the tracks that really stood out to me right in a row, Agenda Ignis, Agenda Ignis, Bad Blood, and Malum. Malum, the main riff of that really caught my ear because it really sounded like Pagan Fears from De Mysteriis Dom Satanas. And the single of Worms and Ruins, I think would fit on that album really well. And Invoke the Oath, really, to me, was very dreamy, very slow and methodical, and just kind of disturbing. And the very last bonus track, Black Glass Communion, has some great riffs. So those were the standout tracks for me.
Yeah, right away. I mean, the Die and False King. I mean, coming, they released a couple singles before this album came out. So when I first put on the full album and The Dying False King came on, and they got into it so quick, and it hit you. So that really, I was glad to hear that right off the bat and really catch me. And then the way that I kind of listened to it is I just played it while I was doing things, and then kind of half paying attention to it and seeing what stood out. And it was really Bad Blood and Malum that they really caught my ear to just pay attention more and just really just sit and listen instead of doing something in the background. So those were definitely two. And then Of Worms and Ruins, like just the atmospheric sound that they went with, it was just it's good to break it up, because you get so much. If every song is just super fat, it's tough to differentiate. It blends all together at some point. So for them to really break them apart with those more atmospheric and slower and build-in tracks, that made it stick better with me.
That's my overall problem with Mayhem. Not problem, but the thing that turns me off sometimes about their music is just, like you said, it's broken up, but when it's just all one thing on an album and it feels like a wall, and I don't even mean it in like a way where it's like too fast or too heavy or anything like that. I just mean where it's the same riffs over and over again, because there are some repetitive things on this album. It's not a perfect album. It's definitely Mayhem's best in a while, but it's a long time, actually, I would say, since Wolfslayer Abyss.
Yeah. But
it's still some points are repetitive, and that's the problem I had with the album. That's the problem I had with Dying False King, and some of the middle tracks of the album where it kind of just felt like the same thing over and over.
No,
again.
I agree. And then once Of Worms and Ruins and Invoke the Oath, those were two just really good tracks at the end of the album. Overall it was just, I was really happy to listen to it.
So I'm going to give this album, so we have rating scales. We made up our own rating scales. I based my rating scale on Cinema, at the cinema, and how they give every movie 5 bags of popcorn, and they say every movie's an Oscar contender. So what I did is my rating scale will be 10 James Hetfields are the perfect album. 10 James Hetfields. So Master of Puppets is 10 James Hetfields. I will give this album 6 James Hetfields. It's good. It's worth owning. Got some really good tracks on it. I can't wait to hear these tracks live. That's what I'm really excited about. I hope Mayhem really focuses on this album when they play live, because we've seen them play the classics. What's your rating scale? 5 Billy B's.
5 Billy B's. You know what? I'm just going with a perfect album would be 10 horns up, and
there you go.
I would say I'll give this one 7 horns up.
10 Keith Buckleys.
10 Keith Buckleys.
Yeah. I think we're kind of in the same thing, so the same area. So cool. Next, we're going to talk about what we want to do is talk about some of our favorite albums and our favorite picks. Maybe some things that got overlooked. Maybe some things that don't get overlooked. And I'm going to start with mine. I brought it today. One of my favorite albums of all time, Dissection, Rent Chaos, and it came out in 05 or 06. Last album by Dissection before John, the lead singer, unfortunately took his own life. And it's an interesting album because before this, Storm of Light's Bane was the last album before John went to jail. And when he got released, this was the album that came out. And Storm of Light's Bane is a great album, has some great classic melodic black metal tracks on it, where Dead Angels Lie, I can't think of the track names offhand right now, but there's a lot of great songs that are in that album, but it's small. It's only 8 tracks long. Rent Chaos kind of takes the good things and the melodies of that, slows it down, and throws in some classic heavy metal. Black Dragon, when I first listened to that song, I thought of Dio. I thought of and it's not just because it's Dragon. I mean, you think Dio, you think Dragons, it's because of the riff. It was the main riff. And same thing with Dark Mother Divine. It sounds like Breaking the Law. The middle of the song reminds me of Breaking the Law, where he's like, Dark Mother Divine. It reminds me of Breaking the Law. I can see Dissection sitting in the back of a pickup truck in the 80s playing the song on air guitar, and Their Hair in the Wind.
I like God of Forbidden Light on that.
God of Forbidden Light is definitely one of my favorite songs of all time. When MySpace was around, years and years ago. God of Forbidden Light was the song that played when people went to my MySpace page. So I love that song, and I love the finisher, which is Mahakali. Those are some of my favorite songs on the album, and I love the female vocals on Mahakali. It's just so ominous. Reminds me of Lord Belial, and they're all from Sweden, but Lord Belial's first album that they released worldwide, Enter the Moonlight Gate, there was a final track, and it was Realm of a Thousand Burning Souls Part 1, and that really reminded me of that song, and how that song feels like you're dying and going to hell, and that's what I loved about Mahakali. It was kind of in that same vein.
My album, while I don't have, I stopped buying CDs a long time ago.
His album.
Here's my album right here.
It's in digital format.
Yep. The one I want to talk about was actually, it's a pretty popular album, and it is pretty close to my heart. It is Pantera, Far Beyond Driven. This was the first taste of heavy metal I ever had. When we would sleep over Derek's house and listen to that. It was just, when Strength Beyond Strength started, like, it was just nothing I had ever listened to before. I had cassette singles of Ace of Base and whatever was fun for a 10 or 11-year-old to listen to at the time. So when I heard Strength Beyond Strength, or becoming the opening riff of Slaughtered, it was just, it took me to such a different place, and it really opened me to a world that I never really heard before. And you were into this stuff way before I was, so it was really ear opening. It's an album I can still listen to front to back today. It's such a good album, and it's just because it was really the first heavy metal that I ever heard or listened to. It was really, that sticks with me, and it forever will.
I remember when the first song I heard from that album, I remember when it first came out, was Good Friends in a Bottle of Pills, and Scott pulled me in his room and he's like, "You gotta hear this," and he played it, and he played it so loud, and his mom came upstairs. I was like, "What are you listening to? That's terrible, turn it off." And the rest of the album, I remember hearing the riff around Broken the first time, and hearing him scream that, and it was just it really was. And people nowadays that are younger don't understand, because it just, in that time, we just didn't, there wasn't that stuff around. Like, right.
You couldn't go and pull up a video or just pull it up anywhere you wanted to.
And there just wasn't a sound like that. And it was so thrashy and so groovy. It was just right in the middle. And obviously it had a huge influence on just so many things that came afterwards.
The opening of, so Slaughtered really stuck, and Use My Third Arm, just that opening riff. And then when the drums kick in from Vinny, it was just so good. And even when you get to the all the Dimebag solos, especially on like 5 Minutes Alone, it was just coming from, listen to The Sign, Ace of Base, or No Doubt, like it was just completely, it just shattered everything that I knew about music.
Right. What I love what they did with that album too is they could have just put on Planet Caravan as a bonus track, but they didn't. They included it as part of the album, and it's, usually the ballad goes in the middle of the album.
Yep.
And throwing it on the end after everything, all of a sudden you have this song where, it's these, not bongos, I don't know what Vinnie Paul used, but, it's just, obviously it's a Sabbath cover from the Paranoid album, but it's just so mellow. Mm-hmm. And it's so spacey, and I remember there was a music video for that song, and Pantera wasn't even in it. It was like a computer generated.
Wasn't it like illustrations of them?
Like us, yeah. It had like illustrations of them, and it was like a computer generated video of
like you were
going out to the universe and spreading. And that was the first time I heard Pantera.
Like a caravan of planets.
What's great about these guys? And then I heard Good Friends in a Bottle of Pills, and that was kind of what hooked me in with that album. Yeah, it's a really good album. I love that album. All right, so next time we will be taking a look at another album. We don't know which one yet. There are a ton of new releases that just came out the past month, so we have our pick. I was thinking Gate Creeper.
I was thinking Gate Creeper, or Spirit Adrift, or 69 Eyes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, maybe we'll do a couple different episodes filming that. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we will see you next time.